And good morning. Good to have you join me today. We are here for another episode of Joy Story, and we got some good stories to tell. This is going to be a great day. We're going to have a great time, and this will be fun. Thank you for joining me. So, as you come into the room, let me know who you are, where you're from. Love to greet you. Jim LaVerde is my guest today, if we can get him going. We just did a little bit of preliminaries, and he's having a little bit of technical difficulty. Our producer, Jake, is working with him right now and see if we can get him up and running, and hopefully we'll do that really soon here. Jim LaVerde from Barron Cross, worship leader for Sanctuary, and a lot of you already know Jim, so we're excited to have him on and hear from him a little bit. And I'd love to hear from you. If you're logging on, let me know where you're from. Love to see where people are watching from. That's kind of a cool thing. Drinking a little Headbangers Brew this morning, and just saying, the best coffee in the world, of course. Now there's a mug, huh? I know. And, you know, we've got some of these travel mugs that I really love. Here's a Headbangers Brew one. And the nice travel mugs. We've got several different kinds of those. And we have this kind that keep things really hot. And it's a Sanctuary one. And, you know, it keeps things hot all day. All of those and much more in our store. And where you can find a whole lot of cool stuff. Just saying. So, folks, if you're joining me, love to have you log in. I know it takes a few minutes for people to catch on and see where we're at. And you can watch this. You probably already are, honestly, in several Facebook pages, in YouTube, and, well, a lot of other spots. So wherever you're watching from, just let me know you're there, and it'll come automatically to us. And our producer extraordinaire, Jake, will put you on the screen. Barry is here. Good to see you, my friend. Barry is a good friend to this ministry. And it's very, very good to see you this morning, just saying. So, folks, log in. Let me know where you're from as well. I think I'd love to know that. So would a lot of other people. Greg is here, Gregory from Northern Kentucky, and so you're on the other side of me there. Nashville, Tennessee, and Kentucky kind of meet, but we're like this. So, Gregory, good to have you here today. Great to see you. John Cassandro, are you serious? And he says, looking forward to seeing you in September, hopefully sooner. That'll be awesome. John is an old friend. And John, we're getting older too. But John, you actually did the posters and everything for the Immortal Festival. And John's been very involved in Christian music professionally for a very long time. And on the end of promotion. And he's awesome. Awesome. John used to be a DJ on the old Sanctuary Intense Radio, had his own show there. And John, we'd love to have you back. We're getting ready to start it again. Our illustrious producer, Jake, will be heading that up. And so we'll be talking more about that as we go. And John, we'd love to have you back. John's good at it. Knows a lot about music. So if you're joining me, folks. Let me know where you're watching from. Would love to know that. Sam Morgan, good to see you from New Zealand. Yes, good friend of the ministry. And it's getting a little late over there, isn't it? It's early here and late there. So, our friend Sam from down under, which means we're up over. Is that the way it works? At least I think it does. Great. Well, folks, again, check in. Um, Muskogee, Oklahoma. I'm proud to be an Okie from Muskogee. There you go, Carolyn. Good to see you today. Awesome. Folks, check in with me. We're going to get started. And Joy's story, we have Jim LaVerde coming on in a little bit. And I'd love to hear your Joy stories. What's good happening in your life in a day when there's so much bad news? Isn't it great to have a little good news? I'm just saying, which is why I started this podcast. I think, we could really use some good news, couldn't we? I could. And the best good news is that you're here joining me and we're spending this time together. Totally love it. Totally love it. Christopher Keene, good morning to you from sunny Azusa. Chris is a professor at Azusa Pacific College and on the sanctuary staff. Chris, we have been together now 37 years, and I still like you. I know. And he still tolerates me, so it's a good thing. Good to see you, Chris. That's awesome. Eddie Greenwood is here from Gallatin. So, Eddie, you're right across the lake from me. I'm on the other side. Shall we wave? I don't know if you'll see me way over there, but Eddie, good to see you today. And hot, humid day here in Tennessee, isn't it, Eddie? I was just outside feeding the animals, the ducks and the geese, etc. And yeah. So I have to tell you a story real quick. I heard some noises the other night, and a lot of times it's just the animals outside, but it kept waking me up through the night, and finally about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, I heard some glass break, and I thought that wasn't outside, that's inside. So I came, and there was some glass broken on the ground on my floor, and I thought, oh, I have a visitor in here. How did that happen? So I closed the bathroom door, which is right adjacent, and I searched my space here and couldn't see anything. So I thought, well, there's probably an animal in the bathroom then. So I cracked the door, and there's a raccoon sitting on the toilet looking straight at me. Yeah. So I had a visitation, and 2 nights later, I had another visitation from him. And then we finally found out how he was getting in. But we've had a lot of problems with our home, and that's just one of the long list of things. The house actually is going to be torn down, but by somebody else. So we've sold the house. We're getting ready to move in the next few weeks now. Uh, this house is sold. We're finishing the purchase of the new one, big log cabin in the middle of the woods, and so I'm excited for the move, but a lot of work ahead of us. A lot of work ahead of us. So, folks, if you're joining me, log in if you would. Let me know where you're from, and just say hello. Say good morning. That'd be nice to hear from you. We have Jacob here. He says, good morning, Pastor Bob. I love seeing your videos. Thank you. And he says, and say hello to the raccoon. So we tried to catch it. We have, I love raccoons. I really do. I think they're awesome. But with all the food around here and everything, they kind of tend to be a little bit of a nuisance. So we usually catch them and then release them somewhere else. And it's probably time to do that again. So we set up the trap, and the first night we caught a mama possum. Yeah, that we separated from her babies who were kind of wondering what was going on. And And there's been a skunk around here lately. So I'm afraid we're going to catch the skunk if we keep that trap going. So I think we're just going to put up with the raccoons the little bit of time we have left. And yeah, so I will. I'll say hello to the raccoon. Thanks, Jacob. Good to see you this morning. Hayden is here. Now, Hayden says, "Good morning, grooviest dude." You know that Hayden is the grooviest dude. And whenever you see artwork, anything that has sanctuary on it, this is done by Hayden. This guy right here. He is the best. I know. So we are blessed to have him, and we're blessed not just because he's a good artist, but he's a great guy. And he's almost as good looking as Pastor Bob, just saying. Just saying. Dwayne is here. Good morning, PB, from Branson, Missouri. Awesome. Uh, love Branson. Spent a lot of time there, Dwayne. And my good friend Tim Pope lives there. Tim used to play drums for Ray Charles, and these days he's playing for Tony Orlando, has for probably, I don't know, almost 30 years, I guess now. And I go there to visit him every once in a while. I'll probably be there before the end of the year again. But Tim is probably the best drummer around. Guy is amazing. And Dwayne, you may already know of him. He plays with a lot of different groups there, especially with his church and of course with Tony. So love Branson, Missouri. It's kind of the family edition of Las Vegas in a lot of ways. Very cool place. So there's a good shout out to Branson. Revan is here. Good morning to you, dude. And Revan has been in, gosh, a whole lot of bands. Where do I even start, huh? And Revan is my good friend for over 20 years. Originally from Norway, living in the States now. And he is very, very talented. Been in some bands. If I started to name the bands, you would know them. But he's a great player and just a great friend. Good to see you, dude. And Kara, I knew you were going to be here. Good for you. Kara doesn't miss anything, and she's awesome. And yesterday was my birthday. Happy birthday, Kara. 21, right? I'm sure that's it. You know, I'm 21 as well, and I've been 21 for a couple of years now. I know. Just a few. 49 years? 49, 50. Yeah, I've been 21 for 49 years. I have a lot of experience being 21, don't I? I guess so. Yes. Good to see you, Kara. Jacob says nobody in is handsome as the Love Doctor. Yes. You know, I do this, and you can see my Love Doctor. I am the Love Doctor. Yes. Thanks, Jacob. The Love Doctor. Sign in with me, folks, if you're coming in today, if you're coming into the room. Barry said, I have 9 deer in my yard every day, along with a couple of raccoons. Isn't that cool? We do too, that walk through the yard. The place that I'm living has tons of deer. I'm looking forward to that. There isn't any water, and man, I've loved living on the lake here. But we're going to eventually build a pond there and stock it with some ducks. So I'm excited to do that and bring them back because I like my little feathered friends, and it's going to be hard to leave them, to be honest. Many that I take care of. But the new people love them as much as I do, and they've agreed to feed them. I've showed them which ones are, wounded and which ones I take special care of, because if I didn't feed them, they would probably die. So we got to keep them going, don't we? Roxanne, good to see you. Roxanne is my real cousin. And, even if she wasn't my cousin, she'd still be a very good friend. She's cool, very cool. And Roxanne, good to see you this morning. My awesome cousin, Roxanne. And, we've been cousins our whole life, just saying. Hmm. Michael is here from Colorado Springs. Man, I love Colorado Springs. And I have a lot of history in that area from years past. Lived in Colorado Springs for a little while. Have some good friends that live there even now. Michael, good to see you. Thanks for checking in today. Folks, we're going to move along. If you are joining me, just say hello real quick and where you're from. And I'm not sure if Jimbo is here yet. My producer Jake will let me know if that's worked out, if we've gotten our technical difficulties underway. We'll see. Um, and if not, we'll just talk for a while. Folks, I would, let's see. Uh, he says, I'm not sure if he's going to have enough internet. Yeah, it's an internet problem today. And we're kind of always on the verge of that happening. It's always an internet difficulty from time to time. So, yeah. So, folks, I would love to hear your joy stories again today. And, you know, my mom and I were just talking about this last night, that it is always so exciting to see how God orchestrates our lives. And if I were to go through our whole process of selling this house, which is unsellable, by the way, the house needs to be knocked down. It's really that bad. And built again, which you really can't do here. And so we weren't sure how we were going to pull all this off, because if we have a home that we can't even sell and our equity is in here, what are we going to do? And so our neighbor bought the house. He's going to expand his yard and make this part of his yard, which is very cool. And he was very generous with us, and we got a good price for the house. It's a miracle. I mean, it really is. And then the one house that we like, that we looked at a lot of houses, and the one that my mom says, this one feels like home. And it really does. The people that are selling the house wanted us to have it. And so they've bent over backwards for us to get the house. They could have probably sold it to somebody else, and they've just kept on with us. And we had to sell some more farmland that we have in Montana. Yesterday, it sold for more than we expected, top dollar, which is enough to get into the new house. And it's just, it's so cool when God orchestrates things. God is bigger than any problem, bigger than any situation, bigger than our circumstances. And where God guides, he provides. And, I've learned, folks, over the years that my biggest difficulty is not raising funds and not keeping things moving financially and juggling everything around. My biggest one is to figure out what God is doing. Because if I know where God is leading, then I trust him to lead. Finances have never been a problem as long as we're on the right track. So whenever finances begin to be a problem, or begin to become stretched, I hit my knees and say, Lord, what am I doing wrong? You tell me. Because I know that if this is of God, if you're doing this, Lord, then things are going to happen. And after all these years of ministry, over 50 years of ministry, I've watched him do that. And Sanctuary has been such a blessing for us, but I can honestly tell you that we've never had enough money to run Sanctuary. It's never happened. And if Jim is able to join us, um, he'll talk about that. And in fact, Jim and I were talking yesterday, and I have seen him several times this week. He lives about a mile from me. We were talking yesterday about the time, 35 years ago probably, when we needed a specific amount to keep going. And Jim and I were on our knees praying. Lord, show us what to do. Give us, you know, give us a sign, give us your blessing, give us some money, you know. And as we were praying, um, my secretary beeped and said, so and so is here and she has a gift for you. And so this girl came in, and I knew that she had been in a car accident, and she got a settlement for the car accident and said, I wanted to give you guys part of it. And when we looked at the check, it was to the penny exactly what we needed. There have been those times along the way, folks, that I get goosebumps thinking about it, but there have been literally hundreds of those times now, all these years later, and all of these years in ministry where God takes care of us. As long as I know that we're on the right track, I know He's going to take care of us. And so there are great times ahead. We've got some huge announcements that we're going to make, and I was going to have Jim make one of them today. And if he's not able to join us this time, we'll have him next time and figure out the situation. But I want him to make the announcement. Pretty exciting. So, folks, check in with me. Let me know where you're from, and let me know that you are here. And producer Jake, if Jim should happen to show up and his all of his internet is working well enough, you just put him on with me, okay? That would be awesome. We are thankful for our producer Jake. He is awesome. And Jake, it'd be a good idea one of these days just to do a joy story with you. Love to have our listeners get to know you a little better too, because they're going to see a lot of you in the future. So that would be awesome. Folks, check in with me. I would love to hear your joy stories if you have anything you'd like to share. What is God doing in your life? What is the thing that is blessing you the most today? You think, since I got up this morning, what has been my blessing from the Lord? How is God moving with me? So, producer Jake just said that he probably doesn't have the best internet and won't be able to be on with us today, which means we'll schedule him for next week, and we can. We'll make sure that he has better internet. I'll just tell him to come over to my house. Yeah, we can do that. We can do that. So, folks, what has blessed you today? What do you have in your life that God is doing that, only God can do? And, a blessing isn't necessarily financial. It is so many things. It's spiritual, it's emotional, physical, and so many blessings that God is doing. And I love it when that happens. Pretty cool. So I have to tell you a story. This is a huge blessing to me. I was speaking at one of our festivals in Uster, Switzerland, a number of years ago. And as I was speaking, I saw this young man sitting way back. There were hundreds of people there, and I saw this young man sitting way back with his father. They were sitting there, both metalheads, and God kept saying, "I want you to talk to him. I want you to talk to him. That kid right over there." And I couldn't figure out why, but I thought, okay, sure. So when I got done speaking, and I called some of the guys up that were going to continue the ministry, and I went over to him and I said, "Come on and chat with me for a few minutes in the lobby." So he did. He introduced himself, and we got to know each other a little bit. And I just said, I just feel something with you, and I'm not sure what that is. And so he actually ended up coming over. I don't know if it was the next year or a year later, or whatever, for 3 months to work with the homeless ministry. Great guy. And instantly became part of the family with my mom and I. Just such a great guy. And we were so blessed to have him. And we had a good time. And then a couple years later, he said, "I think I'm ready to come back." And so he came back for another 3 months. Well, the second time that he came back, towards the end of the stay, my brother came to visit. And he brought a couple of his kids with him, and one of them was my niece, Gwendolyn. hmm And and they instantly liked each other and didn't know what to do. And so finally, they both discovered that they had this mutual attraction. But by that time, she had gone back to Montana where she lives, and he was flying back to Switzerland. So they kept in touch. They She flew over to Switzerland. They kept coming back and forth, and they're here right now visiting me. They're on their way to Switzerland to get married. Isn't that cool? So, what started with that time and in a festival speaking to this day, and it's what 10 years later, whatever it is, maybe not quite that much, maybe about 10 years. Um, Now they're ready to be married, and he's about to become real family, not just in the Lord. So that's one of my joy stories. I couldn't be more excited for Gwen and for John Marco is his name, because they're about ready to get hitched. Isn't that a cool story? Love that. And only God can do that. Put that kind of situation together. And when it happens, it's awesome. Do you have any joy stories you'd like to share? What is God doing in your life today? That's a good question, isn't it? Anything anybody would like to share? Well, I drink a little bit of Headbangers Brew this morning. Peter Stenlund, my good friend in Sweden. I've stayed at his house many times, and we've been a good friends for a long time. And Peter says, my biggest blessing is my wife. Eleanor is her name. And I actually married them a number of years ago. And Peter, after all these years of being married, I am so glad to hear you say that still. And she is awesome. You did really well. You did really well. Whenever we look at a wife that's awesome, we always say, you married up. And you did, Peter. That's awesome. And you just finished your weekend workshop with musicians, didn't you? Peter is an awesome singer. Band called Laudamus. If you haven't heard of Laudamus, you should. Some great albums out. And but Peter's been working a lot with Rex Carroll and with some other guys, and continuing to minister to the Christian metal crowd. And appreciate so much the stuff that he's doing, especially there in Sweden. Very awesome. And I missed you, my friend. I usually see him every year or two, and I haven't seen him for a few years now, so I just haven't been traveling very much. So, Peter, it's your turn to come over and visit me. Just saying. Just saying. Barry says, talk with you over a cup of coffee, but you and the Ministry of Sanctuary are a big part of it. That's awesome. And, nothing blesses me more, Barry, than to hear that somebody has been blessed by these bunch of renegades called sanctuary staff, because we really are. And all of us know that we're all geeks for God, and we are. But man, do we love our family, this family, you. And we're dedicated to you. And gosh, we have such huge things to announce that are happening right now that will affect all of you and the future. And, man, it's so hard for me to keep secrets. I just want to go, and here's what's going on. And I'm going to keep Jim's news for him to tell. And he'll tell that as soon as he's here next week. You got to join in for that. Michael says, my daughter Samantha is going to be 9 this Friday. She's my lifesaver. Michael, what a huge blessing. Seriously. I don't know of a bigger blessing than that of family, of children, of wives, husbands. The unit of the family is so important to God. And I'm excited that that's a blessing for you. And I'm glad that she's your lifesaver. And I get that. I get that. To be able to pour your life into somebody that you can love and cherish is a lifesaver. Totally is. Kara says, I'm just so thankful to be part of this metal family. Kara, we love having you here. We're thankful that you're here too. Never have I ever felt more accepted by a group of people. I've always been the outsider, just not ever quite fitting in until I found Sanctuary. And Carrie, you know why that is? Because we are all exactly the same way. We're all people that don't fit in necessarily really good in society, but we have that camaraderie with each other. It's cool, isn't it, Kara? And Kara, that's awesome. Kara's a mom, a homeschooling mom. Is that correct, Kara? And I appreciate that you're here with us. We love having you as part of the Sanctuary family. I would love to hear more from you folks. Let me know what your joy story is today. Jim officially does not have enough internet, so we will reschedule him for next Wednesday, and I'll make sure he comes to my house to do for the internet, because I think he's going to need that. I know. Kara says, yes, very thankful. Homeschooling mom. Can I tell you how much respect I have for homeschooling moms? I love them. I just think that is the greatest thing. And the homeschoolers that I know are so blessed by the way they've been raised, and they're solid people. And just to be able to have that kind of input into your family is so awesome. And I know that for some people, there's a lot of controversy around homeschooling, but I know what kind of work it is. I understand what kind of a sacrifice it is to homeschool. You know, it's a lot easier just to send your kids off to school and have the day off. And some of you don't have a choice with it. Some of you need to go to work and support your families in one thing or another. But for those of you that are able to homeschool and do like Kara is doing, what a huge blessing. Huge, huge, huge. And thank you for doing that. And thank you for raising champions, Kara, because that's what you're doing. Awesome. Awesome. We've had some great joy stories here so far, folks. If you have one you'd like to share, please do. Barry says, you are a special person to have the patience to do so. She is, isn't she, Barry? Because it does involve a lot of patience, too. And it's kind of that extra mile. Kara says it works for us. So thankful for the opportunity of it and the freedom it provides. And it really does. And Kara, you don't have to be tied to a schedule so much then, do you? You have opportunities. If your family's having a fidgety day, mine did a lot. And my dad always knew it. He says, let's go for a drive. Let's go here today. Let's do this. And, you know, I remember the time when I was really struggling with American history in school. And my dad said, let's go on a trip. And we covered the United States, went all over the United States. We visited all of these amazing places, all of the historical places, the museums, the whole thing. I think we were gone for 3 weeks. And I came back and aced American history. But my dad knew that the family needed a little time like that, a vacation, and you know, we bought groceries and made lunch in the car, and you know, it wasn't an extravagant thing. We, you know, we did it very cheaply, especially in those days. But you know, it was the boost that I needed to understand American history, and to this day, I still have all of that in my head, and it's helped me for my travels later. So. Yeah, but you'll never regret, Kara, the time you spend with them. Christopher Keene, who again is a professor at Azusa Pacific College, says all of my best college students are the homeschoolers. They are more proactive, the best leaders, and are very social. And Chris, isn't it interesting that people say just the opposite about it, that they're not as proactive, that they're not leaders because they haven't been socialized and they don't do well in social settings. The opposite is really true. And if you just keep your kids locked up at home, of course, that's a different thing. But homeschoolers usually get out more than anybody else. The average homeschooler does anyway. And there's so many ways to integrate people into society without public school being one of them. And I'll tell you these days, and Chris, I'm sure you would agree, because I know you very well, um, that these days, the indoctrination that's going on in our public schools and our universities is scary, scary. And I'm not so sure that I would send my child to college, even these days. It depends on what they want to go into. But I've seen so many great kids go into college and graduate with a degree and atheists. Yeah. So yeah, you just have to say what's the balance here, and things are scary. They really are. I get that. Good comment, Chris. Folks, we have a few more minutes left. If you'd like to check in, please do. Love to hear from you today, and love to see what you're up to. Kara said, I have children who have sensory processing difficulties, so we find ways that work for us. It truly is a blessing to be able to teach them. Now, Kara, that's a really good point, because they probably would be outcast in school. The school isn't set up to really help kids that aren't in the flow. There's a certain method, and if you're outside of that method, it's really difficult to be able to keep up and to be able to process. And so the fact that you are able to spend that time, individually and corporately with your family and find ways for them to learn. Not everybody learns the same way. And some people learn. Our webmaster Jason, by the way, is awesome. And whenever I say, would you explain this to our staff, he writes a book. He writes a manual. He's so good at that kind of thing. I suck at it. And he's very, detail oriented. I am very visual. If I want to learn how to do something, I would rather say, would you teach me how to do it, than read the manual. I read the manual and I get lost. It's just over my head. But if somebody can show me, I'm visual. So I learn visually, and some people do. The average school system is not set up for visual learning. And so people like me, and maybe people like you, depending on what your expertise is, you get a little lost. And just my experience with those of us, Kara, that you were saying you're a little on the edge and not understood by a lot of people, I would imagine that the way you learn is not the normal way that most people do either, just like me. And I think all of us tend to be a little more outside the box, a little more experiential with things. And that's why I love the metal movement, because it's so unique. It's such a family. It really is. And the music's awesome, just saying. So, folks, give me your comments. If you haven't let me know that you're here and where you're from, please do that. I would love to know that. Saturday, once again, by the way, um, the police chief will be with me again. We're going to do our Odd Couple podcast, 9 a.m. Saturday morning. Robin said 100% support homeschooling. And you've seen it happen too, haven't you, Robin? Absolutely. And it's amazing, just to see the impact of people, when they do. So, yeah, very, very cool. So, folks, check in. Let me know where you're from. Let me know who you are. And, one of my favorite things is that we have people that watch from all over the world. I love that. And, the more I travel, the thing that I find the same in every place is the heart of our great metal family. And the languages may be a little different, but the people are exactly the same. And I love this family. I love this family. Love you. Gunnar is here from Denmark, this time usually in Iceland. And Gunnar, thank you for joining us. So Iceland is owned by Denmark, isn't it? It's the same government, and both are beautiful places. Love them both. I've spent a whole lot of time in Denmark, as you probably know, Gunnar, and we've done festivals there often, and some of my favorite people are in that area. Thank you for joining us. Great, great place. Beautiful. Greenland is incredibly beautiful. Yeah, Iceland. So, folks, check in. We have a few minutes left. If you have a joy story, what are you thankful for today? Would love to hear that. Michael is here. I am blessed to have the gift of forgiveness, grace, and mercy. For Yeshua is our salvation. Thank you, Father, for forgiving us our trespasses. Love you, Pastor Bob. Love you, Michael Wood. Thank you. And awesome. And isn't that the greatest gift we could ever have? Folks, that is our joy story. That God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. It's awesome, isn't it? And that's where we stand. That's our foundation. That's who we are. Our identity is who he is. Let this mind be in you that was also in Christ Jesus. I've been crucified with Christ. Yet I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. Scripture's full of those incredible joy stories. And folks, may those incredible principles that God has given us from his word be your joy story today. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a great time. We'll get Jimbo next week. And he's got some announcements to make, and he's got some joy stories also to share. And I've totally enjoyed spending this time with you. Thank you for joining me. We'll see you next week.